folks, welcome back. Thank you for watching. Please do hit subscribe if you haven't done so yet. It really does help when you do that. So today folks, I've got a very interesting and brand new guitar speaker to show you. Now, as regulars to this channel will know, I'm a big fan of the old school clanky vintagey AlNiCo speaker sound. AC30s, JTM45s, things like that. Clean to low, medium gain crunch. That's my happy place. And in the world of guitar speakers, there's some pretty big players, especially nowadays, but by far and away the most notable name is Celestion. Now, back in the 1960s, when guitar amplifiers were kind of starting to be properly developed and made commercial, one of the OGs was, of course, the Vox AC30. And they needed a speaker to put in that amplifier. So Celestion took an existing speaker, the G12, which was designed for radios, and beefed it up a little bit, certainly in terms of its construction, to cope with the sort of vibrations and stresses of being in a guitar combo amplifier. And that became the Celestion AlNiCo Blue, that's very synonymous with those old 60s AC30s. And they still make them today, of course. Now, shortly after that, Marshall came into existence and they wanted to use the same speaker in their JTM45s and Bluesbreaker combos. So to differentiate a little bit, they used Celestion silvers. Now, as far as I'm aware, they are exactly the same speaker, just with a slightly different paint job, and the silvers didn't have the kind of bell cover over the magnet that Celestion still use on their AlNiCo speakers today. But they're fundamentally exactly the same 15-watt AlNiCo speaker. So that particular cone was very, very closely tied with those 60s British jangly, crunchy guitar sounds. And of course, after that, the G12M greenback came in, and ceramic speakers in general, and the world kind of moved on a little bit. But there's still been a real love for that old school AlNiCo sound, especially in recent years. And Celestion still make a good selection of AlNiCo speakers today. So they still make the Blue, 15-watt speaker. They also make a Gold, which is a kind of 50-watt version of the Blue. They do sound very similar. And then they introduced the Cream, which is a 90-watt AlNiCo speaker, slightly different, not quite as chimey, but still very much part of that AlNiCo range. And a few years ago, they introduced a fourth speaker into their lineup, the 35-watt Ruby. Now, I demoed that speaker when it was new, and I'll link to that video up there now. It's an old video, the video quality is not amazing, but you'll hear in that video that the Ruby is a very different thing. Celestion AlNiCo speakers to me are all about that kind of clanky sound, the very distinct dynamics that come with that magnet, and the top-end fidelity. The Ruby basically had none of those things. It sounded super compressed, it had no top end, it sounded like there was a blanket over the thing, and it was very bloated in the lower mid-range. So for things like the creamy, thick Brian May type sound, perfect. But as a general AlNiCo speaker, it lacked all of the idiosyncrasies, really, of a classic AlNiCo speaker. So it wasn't really for me, the Ruby. And shortly after, I was emailing with the folks at Celestion, and I said to them, a 25-watt silver reissue, that would be my dream speaker. Now, I'm not saying I had any hand whatsoever in this speaker today hitting the market. I absolutely did not. However, switch out 25-watt for 30-watt, and they've kind of made my dreams come true with this speaker. Now, if you know the old AlNiCo silvers from the 60s, you'll see the visual similarities straight away. But this is essentially a reissue of that old speaker, the AlNiCo 100. Now, just to clarify, this is not a 100-watt speaker, it's a 30-watt speaker. The 100 stands for the fact that this year is Celestion's 100th anniversary. So to kind of mark the occasion, this is a very special speaker that they've released onto the market to kind of celebrate their heritage and that milestone. And as I understand it, what Celestion have done is they have a collection of old silvers. And of course, they were all handmade speakers back in the day, so they will all sound slightly different fresh from the factory. 60 years on, they'll all sound very different because they've all had very different lives. So they've gone through their collection of silvers and pulled out the similarities on all of those speakers. What's the speaker trying to say as a main theme? And they've condensed it all down into a sort of greatest hits package, which is this. So this is basically a 30-watt reissue of the old silver AlNiCo, but with a few mod cons as well. This has 8 mounting holes around the rim. The original only had 4. Lots of amps nowadays use 8, so it's more compatible with that. It has the typical slide-on spade connectors for connecting it to your amplifier. The originals were all hard soldered into the back of the speaker. And of course, the power rating has been beefed up from 15 watts to 30 watts. So this now sits in that very nice sweet spot between the blue at 15 watts and the gold, because the blue is a fairly low wattage speaker, so if you're wanting to gig with it, you'll pretty much have to use it in a 2x12 or with an amp that you might not hear live. If you want to use a gold and you're someone that likes to really push the speaker hard and get that compression and maybe a bit of speaker distortion, you're going to be pushing some serious decibels to get a gold to do that. So the 30 watt kind of sits right in the middle of the two. And if this has a similar voice to the blue and the gold, it really is aimed at that kind of 1x12 mid-powered combo market, which is the happy place for most people playing gigs with tube amps. You can play anything from a small bar to a stadium with a 30-watt amp as long as you mic it properly. So this is very much aimed at the kind of right part of the market to use in a 1x12 mid-powered combo. So what I'm going to do today, folks, is I'm going to put this into a cabinet. I only actually own a 2x12 cabinet, so I'm going to put it in there with a G12M, but I'm going to disconnect the G12M. So all you're going to be hearing today is the silver. And I'm going to hit it with 3 classic amplifier circuits that are very closely tied with the original of this speaker. A JTM45 circuit, a Vox AC30 style circuit in the Dr. Z Z-Rec, and also a kind of old school orange amplifier, because back in the sort of orange matte amp days, they used the silver AlNiCos too. So I'm going to use those 3 circuits and primarily just crank the amps up really loud here in the room to get this thing moving some air and see if we can get close to those old school sounds. I'm not really going to use any pedals today. I might throw a delay on, I might put a fuzz on at some point to see how it copes with complete obliteration, but I'm primarily just going to use guitar into tube amp and crank it through the new AlNiCo 100 to see how it gets on. So without further ado, folks, here we go. we are, folks. Now, please do comment underneath. Let me know what you thought of the Celestion 100 AlNiCo today. Which style of pickup did you prefer it with? Which amplifier? I love chatting nerdy guitar stuff with you folks down in the comment section. Now, that is a very vintagey, very Celestion-y speaker, isn't it? It has all the trademarks of everything we know and love about that manufacturer paired with these sorts of amp circuits back in the 1960s. Especially at kind of low to medium gain, it really has that on the front end of the note that just screams old AlNiCo speaker. I'm really impressed by it, and of course I don't have an original silver here to compare it to, but whenever I've heard people playing these sorts of amplifier circuits through AlNiCo silvers, they do sound very similar. There's a lot of those kind of trademarks of those amps into those speakers that come through loud and clear here in the room. But as always, folks, those are just my thoughts, and as I said, this is a brand new speaker on the market, so I'm really looking forward to hearing what you guys think of this one in this video. So thank you ever so much for watching, folks. I hope this was interesting and useful for you in some way. Please do let me know your thoughts underneath. As I said, I'm really looking forward to hearing from you guys on this one. And yeah, thanks folks, and I will see you very soon. Bye bye.